guys, welcome back to my channel. I haven't actually done a sit down video in a very long time, but I was thinking, why didn't I film something that I'm like interested in that's not about the horses for once? So I'm going to do the originals tag, which I've just found on, it's on Wattpad but it's not a story, it's a tag. They changed it from the Vampire Diaries tag, I believe. So yeah, I'm going to do that. This is probably just going to be uploaded and listed, but I thought it was fun because like I quite like the idea of doing these videos for myself that I can look back on in like however many years and be like, oh my god, I was so obsessed with this show, because I am. So I don't know how many of you are aware of the originals. You probably know about the Vampire Diaries. It's a spin-off of that, but it's miles better. Like, I watched all 8 seasons of the Vampire Diaries twice. Don't ask me how I managed to get through it twice. The first time was a struggle, and the second time I thought maybe it'll be easier. It wasn't. It was harder. If anything, I got bored quicker the second time around than I did the first time. But I wanted to watch it again because I wanted to watch the originals again, but I think if I ever rewatch the originals, I'll just watch from the originals, or maybe even watch the seasons of the first like 4 seasons of TVD first or something like that, and then scrap it and go to the originals. I've always wanted to watch it in like as it was aired, but that seems very complicated, and yeah, I just can't be bothered. I can kind of work out how it all sort of fell into place because it was aired at the same time and there was crossovers and such, but it's not too complicated, and there wasn't really that many of them to be bothered doing that, if I'm honest. But yeah, anyway, so for me the Vampire Diaries was at its best when the originals were in it, which it's like a family of vampires. I don't know if it was the actors, the fact that the story of the originals, they were just so intriguing. They were brought in as villains. I remember in the Vampire Diaries I didn't really like them much at first, but then they were so badass and they were so good at what they did. They were literally just vampires being vampires rather than vampires who didn't really like who they were. It was quite nice to have that badness, but they were so much good, and it just felt like there was so much more to learn about them as characters. So yeah, I'm just going to answer the tag because I'm sure there's much of what I'm rambling on about. But I highly recommend the originals, even if you haven't seen the Vampire Diaries, even if you scrap the Vampire Diaries after a few seasons. It's such a totally different thing. There are a few crossovers. The originals were in TVD for a few seasons, from like season 2 to season 4, I believe. But they were like minor characters because they weren't the main characters of the show. They were like the villains then. But you can kind of just go to the originals without having to watch TVD at all. It's just a lot more grown up. The storyline's so good. A lot of people are so sour over season 4 and season 5 of Tia, but I wasn't too bothered. Like, I felt it ended at a really good point because we all didn't want it to end. TVD felt so dragged out. It was like, oh thank fuck it's finally ended. Even though the last episode was sad, it was kind of like the only episode that was sad of season 8 and that I actually enjoyed. It was almost kind of a relief though that I didn't have to watch it anymore, because the last 2 or 3 even seasons were just gradually getting worse. It was just such a drag, and I don't really know why that was. I just think it went on for too long. Like there was not much storylines and they just dragged it on too much. And in the originals I feel like they could have done more, and perhaps it would have stayed entertaining for longer because a lot of people preferred those characters, those main characters, and we perhaps could have had a lot more about their history. But it was kind of nice. It's kind of nice not knowing everything because we can fill in them gaps in our head, and it was so sad the ending, and I still feel like, why did they have to die? But I also feel like it was fitting, and as a writer myself, I know that you sometimes have to do bittersweet endings, and making people angry and sad is part of being a good writer. You can't always make people happy, and people hate Julie Peck, and I don't understand why people hate her so much, because we all watched 2 of his shows and some people are watching Legacies. I don't know if I'd ever watch that. It's not in the UK yet, but it sounds a bit too childish. But yeah, like, it ended at a point where we didn't want it to end, and that could possibly be because it ended smack where it should have before it got boring. I would have hated it to get really bad. Okay, shall we start with the questions now? How did you discover the show? So I always, that's a lie, I didn't always know about it. So I had Netflix. We got Netflix about a year ago now, and the first thing I watched on it was Heartland. That's what it's called, right? No, Heartland. Yeah, it didn't sound right. Which is like 12 seasons of equestrian bump. Honestly, that was a struggle. I spent most of the time being angry and annoyed about all the references and how airy-fairy it was, but I watched all 12 seasons, and I know there's a season 13, but I don't know if it's out yet. So I watched that, and that took me to September. And then when September came around, I was like, oh, what am I going to watch? Because, like, you know, and we seen Vampire Diaries, and she said, you should watch that, you'd enjoy that. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure, because in my head, I was like, is this going to be Twilighty? I don't know. I'd heard about the Vampire Diaries, and in my mind, I'd always thought, that just sounds so cringe. I was always a diehard. I am never reading the Twilight books. How ridiculous. As when I was growing up. I was like 11 when they came out. Oh, when they were really big. I don't know when they came out, but yeah. And then a couple of years ago, last year, I watched this Discovery of Witches. Like, I'm into witches. Vampires, I've never really tried into that. And I was like, watching it, and the first scene, witches, vampires and demons, and I was like, oh no, what is this? When I watched it, the 8 episode season 1, hooked. So I got the books. There's a 3-book trilogy which is based off of, and I know there's another season out like this year at some point. Hooked. I loved the books, I loved the lore of it, and I actually found out that I actually really loved the vampires much more than I loved the witches, which was like amazing, because I really liked that. I liked how vicious they were. In the Ado books, they are a lot more timid than these. The books, they're not so, I don't know, they made out to be much more human. So when I went over to the Vampire Diaries, I watched it, season 1, I thought I was like, this is cringe, I'm not sure about this, but I watched the whole of season 1, because part of me liked it, and then other part of me was like, I'm not sure about this is really cringe. There's parts of it that I thought were, yeah, in the beginning, and I had to try and take myself away from the lore I had already instilled in my mind from Ado, because it's very different, like the daylight rings and the lore, because in Ado a lot of the vampire like fabrications aren't true, like the burning in sunlight and that sort of thing, and I had to take myself away from that, and the compulsion I found really hard to get my head around, because I was like, how can they do witchy stuff? But once I let myself let go of all my previous and into the world, I was like, I really enjoy this. So I Wikipedia'd it and ruined it for myself. I found out Stefan died. But when I was Wikipedia'ing it, I was like, oh, there's a spin-off, the originals. And when I searched it, the originals hadn't been brought into the show. And so I was like, what is this? And I remember reading up about Klaus before he'd been introduced in the show, and reading that he was a hybrid, and thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this. Because I must admit, I was very close-minded and thinking, oh, is this going to get like really Harry Potter-y really quick? 'Cause I'm not into that. But I loved him. He's my favourite. Yeah, that happened. I watched all 8 seasons of TVD before going on to the originals. And by about season 6, I was like, I can't wait to get to the originals, because I was getting so bored of TVD. And like, I think I was doing Googling and searching and reading, and we'd obviously seen the pilot in the backdoor pilot as part of TVD, and I thought, that looks so good. I loved Marcel, I loved the idea of like Hayley was pregnant, and the New Orleans. I love New Orleans, like the setting of it, everything about the originals I love so much more than TVD. So when I went and watched it, I think I started it in November. That's how quick I went through DVD. Finished it the first time in December, and then watched TVD again, and now I'm back on the originals. I can't stop, I can't help myself, because I fell in love with Jomo. I didn't actually love him that much as Klaus in TVD, like I kind of like watched it, thought he was cool, kind of villainy, and then let it ride away with the show, and was like, I can't wait to watch the originals. But when I got to know Klaus a lot more in the originals, I was like, I love this. But yeah, how did I discover the show? I discovered the show when I was in like season 1, season 2 of TVD the first time around, when I was googling. I was like, gotta watch this. Yeah, that was a long-winded answer, I'm sorry. Who is your favourite character out of all of the originals, or just all of the cast in general? I'm gonna have to just say Klaus, because as much I love all of the original family besides Finn, and a lot of the cast as well that are just in it, there's such a good dynamic, there's loads of really good actors and good characters. But Klaus, he will always be my number one. He's so funny, he's so good at being bad, like I just love him. Klaus, always, 100%, I'm sorry. Although Cole is a quick second, because I kind of forgot how good he was in TVD, because we hardly seen any of him, and then when he came back in the originals he was obviously Coleb, as everyone calls him. But then when we got to know him as, when he came back as Cole again, which I've literally just watched, I don't know, I just loved seeing him as like this wild, crazy vampire. And Klaus and Cole's dynamic is second to none. I'm not being funny. Everyone talks about Klaus and Elijah, but I love Klaus and Cole together. They're so bad together. It's so funny. If you lived in New Orleans, would you be on Marcel's side or Klaus's side? Klaus's side. As much as I love Marcel, his inability to decide whether he hates Klaus or he wants to be Klaus's friend does annoy me. So yeah, Klaus's side. Obviously, Klaus always wins. Team Elijah or Claylee? I can never say that. I'm a Klaus and Hailey shipper, I must admit. I didn't think I was, but I was watching this back and I was thinking, why didn't they end up together? The way she looks at him, for starters. Hailey and Elijah are cute too. I don't dislike them, but I don't like hardcore ship them. But I'm a Klaus and Hailey fan, not gonna lie. I wish they ended up together. I like him with Camille before she turned to a vampire, then I kind of hated her. I don't ship Klaus and Caroline. I thought they were cute in TVD, but I don't think they're endgame. Sorry. Who's your least favourite character? Least favourite? God, there's so many. Let me think. Least favourite. Who did I really, really hate? I can't think. I want to say Finn, but we don't really see him enough to say I hate him. Someone here, the person answering here said Genevieve. I didn't hate Genevieve. She was a good villain. I'm not being funny. I thought Genevieve was good. She was annoying. Like, I'm not being funny, but I didn't hate her. There was, I don't know if Tristan. Yeah, Tristan. I hated from the start. Aurora kind of rubs me up the wrong way, but she's funny. Tristan though, I don't know. So from the minute we met him, I was like, I don't like this guy, and I don't know why. And we didn't know anything about him. He just rubbed me up the wrong way. If you were to be a character, who would you be? Oh, I'd like to be my own character, not one of the ones out of the show. There's a character, I'm writing a fanfic of this now. If I could place her in the show, take away Hailey, as much as I love Hailey. Her name's Luna Franklin, and she's a werewolf, but she's much more like Aurora. I'd be her if I had to choose someone from the show. I'm not sure. I think my personality mostly matches Aurora though, but I wouldn't want to be her. Have you watched TVD? Yes, considering I've just talked for 15 minutes mostly about it. Who's your crush on the show? Klaus, 1000%. Jomo is a god. I'm not being funny. Joseph Morgan is a fucking god, and he was brought up in Wales, which I can't always tell by my accent. I'm Welsh, so he's a god. I could literally look at him all day, and I know people who are British don't really have a thing for accents, but there's something about his voice that I love. And I loved it when he still had his Welsh twang in some of the interviews as well. So funny. Could you imagine if Klaus had been Welsh? What was your first initial thought of the show, and did it change after you saw it? My initial thought of the pilot, the backdoor pilot, I remember being high-key confused about what was going on because we'd watched TVD and then we just got this pilot of them in New Orleans and I was like, what the hell is going on? And then afterwards we went straight to back to normal TVD, and I remember at the time not realising it was a backdoor pilot when I was watching it, and I remember thinking, why are we not seeing what's happening in New Orleans? And then afterwards I realised. I remember thinking I really liked it. That was like the first moment I realised I loved Klaus as a villain, because I remember thinking, who is this Marcel guy? Why are you acting like this towards Klaus? You're gonna get yourself killed. And I loved it. I loved it when he said, when he was like, as you can see, I'm half werewolf, and like bit someone and was like, who has the power now, friend? And that speech Marcel did when he shouts, I am the king. Oh, that is so good. That is good TV. I really enjoyed it. The proper pilot, like the actual season episode 1, when I watched it, I remember being a little bit let down. I think it's because I had the backdoor pilot in my mind and I loved that so much. I preferred the first one, I'm not gonna lie. I thought there was too much Elijah in it, in this season opener. And not that I dislike Elijah, it just seemed to be lacking Klaus, and we just seem to be seeing everything through Elijah's stoic, you know, everyone is family above all sense of view. It's like this, yeah. I wish there was more of the Klaus to be seen in the backdoor pilot in it, but we seen what Elijah was doing, which I enjoyed. Like, it was quite fun to see, like, oh, that's what was going on when Klaus was biting someone. I would have preferred to see a bit more of like the dynamics, but afterwards I thought it had a bit of a slow ball rolling, but once I got into it, it was fine, and I always enjoyed it because I knew I was going to enjoy what it went on to be. Like, I didn't really know what happened, I knew how it ended, because I spoiled it for myself again, but I always knew I was going to enjoy it because Klaus. Who was your favourite villain? I mean, I guess you can't really count the originals as the villains because they're the main characters, but I'm not gonna lie, I loved Klaus when he was being villainy, if that makes sense. I know he wasn't really being a villain, he wasn't like a villain because he was the main character, but I loved it when he was doing bad things and just being Klaus-like and being diabolical. Like when he went off and did whatever and it was probably ridiculous, I just thought it was kind of funny and like, yes, go Klaus. And like when he snapped Freya's neck and Elijah goes, that was ridiculous even for you. I just love Klaus being ridiculous, because to be honest, I reckon that'd be me if I turned, because yeah, the proper villain of the story. I can't really think of many of the villains. Like, I don't feel like anyone played well, I know there was lots of people who actually played proper villainy roles. Like, you could say Klaus's parents, Dahlia, the Hollow. Like, there was never really that much, this is good, this is evil. Like, that's what I really enjoyed about it. People did bad things for good reasons and good things for bad reasons, you know? Like, Marcel did plenty of bad things to help the Michelsons, and vice versa, and like he betrayed them many times too. Could you count Lucian as a villain? Because I really liked him. Like, I know he was like trying to save Klaus in the beginning, but then he was always planning on taking that serum, wasn't he, to become like this freaky phoenix hybrid, whatever, which I hated at first. Which actually I hated in general. I hated that they gave it to Marcel. But as a villain goes, I actually really liked Lucian because he tricked us all, and he was so funny, and I liked his and Klaus's dynamic in the beginning. So if he counts as a villain, Lucian. Well, that's it. Okay. Alright, Okay, so thank you for watching. I'm sorry that I rambled so much. I could talk about this show for days. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sorry if no one's interested in the originals, but if you're into like fantasy, witches, vampires, there's a lot of witch lore in the originals, considering it's about vampires, but I really enjoyed that. And everyone whinges about the witches being more powerful than vampires, but I thought that was a pretty obvious dynamic anyway. That never bothered me, and I never ever questioned it, you know. That was always obvious if you ask me. And werewolves, and I was someone who never thought of werewolves ever until they introduced them in TVD. I mean, I'm glad there wasn't too much of them. I know people whinged about that there wasn't that much of them. I thought there was just enough because I enjoyed the vampires and witches a lot more. That being said, I like I wish there was more hybrids, but then it also made it really unique that Klaus and Hayley were the only ones. But yeah, if you're into that sort of thing, I recommend watching it. Some of you may think it's cringe and stuff. There's lots of bad things that happen. There's no good or bad. You can't really root for someone who's good. So if you're into that sort of thing, I wouldn't watch. The main protagonist is literally the big bad Klaus Michelson, who was a villain in TVD. So yeah. So yeah, that's it. I mean, like, yeah, I think you guys should watch it because it is so good. I know it finished like a year ago now, and I'm late to the trend, but it's such a good show. I mean, it's so good. Much better than TVD. So that's it. I'm gonna go now. Bye!